Hello, I'm Phil Mollen, energy psychotherapist, and this little talk is about what I call the closed mind syndrome. Now, it's a matter of common observation that some people have relatively closed minds. They're not open to new perspectives, new information, and other people have relatively open minds. They welcome new information, new perspectives. This, of course, is the healthier state of consciousness in which we are naturally looking for what is new. We are open to information. It's important to be open to information for our survival and for better strategies of problem solving, to be continually searching, looking for solutions, and also just playing, exploring possibilities. This is the healthy wave of consciousness. It's flowing and seeking and playing. By contrast, this image represents a sealed chamber of thought in which there are just repeating patterns. It's self-referential. It's relatively untouched by the world. New information does not easily get in. It just gets reflected away by this sealed chamber. And the thing about this kind of closed mind syndrome, it's quite common, of course, but it does have some similarity with delusions, which are also rigidly held. They're false beliefs, of course, but they are rigidly held. And the thing about the closed mind syndrome is that the content of what's in consciousness, the content of beliefs and assumptions and so on, may be quite ordinary. So it gets missed. It's not. It gets overlooked because the person appears quite kind of normal-ish. So it's not the content of the mind that's the problem. It's the rigidity with which that person's assumptions are held. There can also be a certain kind of pleasure in that rigidity. The person can just have this assumption that they are right. Their perspective is the truth, and the significance of other perspectives is simply diminished or argued away. We see this, of course, commonly in religious contexts, scientific contexts, and I come across it amongst not just people in general, but amongst scientists, amongst psychologists, amongst psychotherapists sometimes. The closed mind is simply not open to new information or perspectives that are not part of or are not congruent with the prevailing assumptions and paradigms in that person's mind. So it's a little bit analogous to certain quantum phenomena. Now, this is an analogy. It's not literally referring to quantum, the quantum realm, which is strictly speaking the subatomic realm. But you do get quantum-like phenomena occurring at other levels beyond the subatomic. You get quantum-like phenomena occurring within the mind. So in a healthy consciousness, the pilot wave of consciousness is continually exploring and is somehow taking account of all available information. And it's exploring possibilities. It hasn't become fixed. Now, at the actual quantum level, we know that if we try to measure quantum phenomena, our measuring device and human consciousness somehow fixes that quantum realm of possibilities into something fixed. It selects from the realm of possibilities, it selects one possibility. And we know that through the famous double slit experiments. I won't go into the detail of those at that point. But something similar can happen with consciousness itself, that it can undergo a premature collapse into a particular structure. It loses its flexibility, it loses its range of possibilities, and it collapses, it becomes fixed and crystallizes. So how does this come about? So with this image on the left, you have this flowing field of consciousness. It's flexible, able to access a wide range of information. But on the right, something has happened that causes that flowing wave to collapse, to crystallize, become hard and fixed. And so as a result, what I call the personal gauge, which is the set of rules that govern a person's thoughts, emotions, and behavior, that personal gauge becomes fixed and crystallized into this fixed and hard pattern. Of course, we often speak naturally of something crystallizing in our mind. An idea crystallizes, or a perspective crystallizes. And that can be, of course, useful. It provides clarity and precision. The thought or perspective gains a helpful structure. But if the crystallizing of thought becomes rigid and overly persisting, it cuts the person off from new information and adaptation. So in this image on the left, we have the pilot wave of consciousness that can open into multiple exploratory paths. On the right, consciousness has collapsed into a kind of spike of crystalline rigidity. So these two sides of the image illustrate the tension between openness and closure of consciousness. So how and why does this happen? So my impression is that this can happen originally in quite early childhood. And it's like a fateful and in some ways catastrophic decision made by consciousness early in life. And no person, no external person knows what has happened, but something subtle but profound happens in the young child's mind in these instances. I think it's a hypothesis that early consciousness is illustrated in this image. Early consciousness is still fluid, full of possibility, but it encounters an overwhelming shock, perhaps a sense of betrayal, a shattering of trust, or some state of unbearable confusion. And as a result, consciousness crystallizes into rigidity. So in that way, it is similar to the formation of a delusion in later life, because later life delusions often seem to occur following a state of overwhelming psychotic confusion and anxiety. And the delusion suddenly crystallizes, and now everything makes sense to the person. Now everything makes sense. Now I understand. There's a sense of relief. There may also be a more focused fear accompanying the delusion, but there is now a sense of certainty. The confusion, the chaos has been replaced by a pathological certainty. And something like that, I think, can occur completely hidden in a young child's mind. So the rigidity may organize around a belief such as, I am all alone, or I cannot trust anyone, or I must take care of my own needs without regard for others, or it is never safe to be myself. I must always be acting a role. Or my existence is to fulfill my parents' ambitions. And there may be a number of other core beliefs that such a rigid structure crystallizes around. But it's a premature crystallizing. So what is needed for relief or healing of this rigid, closed mind syndrome? So a healing process must involve allowing that rigid lattice of crystallized consciousness to, in a sense, reliquefy back into the wave of natural freedom of consciousness, freedom of thought, curiosity, and that kind of natural syntropic order that we might call coherence. So the image there shows the crystallized consciousness beginning to dissolve. Such a process requires a combination of safety and the input of coherence. Where does that coherence come from? It must come either from the attentive, coherent presence of another person, it might be a psychotherapist, or it can be achieved through practices of meditation, which again bring about a more healthy coherence to a disordered, distorted, and rigidified consciousness. And so this image now represents that state of restored coherence in which consciousness has a structure but without imprisonment. It's a fluidity without chaos. It's a natural, flexible order that we call coherence. And the healthy, dynamic mind then can fluidly, harmoniously inhabit both the wave and crystalline forms, again, borrowing analogies from quantum physics. And this image represents the interpersonal aspects of that restoration of fluid coherence, how there can be a coherent field of consciousness and field of subtle energy between people, that then one person can help to restore coherence to another, can help that rigid, encapsulated state of consciousness in the other to begin to melt, to unfreeze, become more fluid and open. But here we come to a kind of unbearable early state of inexpressible anguish that I think may be at the root of some of these problems. It's when there's an unrecognized consciousness in the infant, the little child, and it's full of potential, but it is never met. It never feels it is encountering another mind that recognizes it, that really engages with that inner consciousness. So the potential is never manifest. It's never brought into being, and so you'd get a split between the true, authentic wave of consciousness and what develops as a presentation to the world of a false performing self. The potential self only becomes an actual self when another mind is implicitly conveying, I see you, you are real. And so we have the first witness of that child being, the first witness of that child's consciousness. The unmanifest consciousness of that child becomes real the moment it is seen. So in the earliest context, this would usually be, or it may not happen, but it would usually be in relation to the mother, father, or other significant caregiver. But later in life, there can be other moments of healing, of feeling seen, and of coming into being through the empathic gaze of an other. And when that happens, there's then no need for the closed and self-crystallized mind. So my hypothesis is that sometimes that closed mind, rigid mind syndrome comes about as a result of early infantile, early childhood, hidden catastrophes of consciousness, where there's either immense confusion or shattering of any trust. The child cannot make sense of what is going on, and so there's a premature crystallizing of certainty based around some hidden belief, or it comes about as a result of that unbearable sense of not feeling seen or met. So in the absence of an other consciousness that can recognize us and bring us into being, the encapsulated consciousness itself has to collapse into a rigid form. And that becomes the basis of what we would later perceive as this person's closed mind. So those are just a few thoughts and hypotheses about how a closed mind syndrome, a rigid mind, may come about. Thanks for watching or listening.